There's a particular kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. Not the physical tiredness that comes from activity, but the deep depletion that settles into your bones when you've been giving more than you have. Saying yes when everything inside you whispers no. What most people don't realize about this bone-deep fatigue is that it's not about being weak or lazy. It's about living in constant violation of your own inner signals. You've learned to override the quiet voice that says, "This is too much," or "I need space," or "This doesn't feel right for me." Instead, you've trained yourself to push through, to accommodate, to be available for everyone's needs except your own. You say yes to invitations when you crave solitude. Take on extra responsibilities when you're already stretched thin. Engage in conversations that drain you because saying no feels selfish or unkind. This pattern didn't develop overnight. Maybe you grew up in an environment where your needs were seen as inconvenient, or where love felt conditional on your availability to others. Perhaps you absorbed the message that good people don't have limits, that caring means being endlessly giving, that boundaries are barriers to connection rather than the very thing that makes authentic connection possible. Or maybe you discovered that accommodating others felt safer than risking their disappointment or displeasure. So you learned to sense everyone's needs except your own. Over time, this becomes so automatic that you lose touch with what you actually want, need, or can realistically handle. You become skilled at reading the room, but illiterate when it comes to reading your own internal landscape. You know when others are tired, overwhelmed, or need support, but you're disconnected from those same signals within yourself. The voice that once guided you toward what nourished and away from what depleted has been so consistently overruled that it's barely a whisper now. The hidden cost of living this way extends far beyond just feeling tired. It affects the quality of everything you do. Because when you're operating from depletion, nothing gets your best energy. Not your work, not your relationships, not your creative pursuits. You're giving from an empty cup, which means even your generosity becomes tinged with resentment. You show up, but not fully. You participate, but from a distance. Your presence becomes a performance of availability rather than genuine engagement. This creates a painful paradox. The more you ignore your boundaries in service of others, the less you actually have to offer anyone. The more you push past your limits to avoid disappointing people, the more likely you become to let them down when you inevitably crash or burn out. You sacrifice your authentic presence for the appearance of unlimited availability, but authentic presence, the kind that actually nourishes relationships, can only emerge from someone who knows their own limits and honors them. Living without boundaries also disconnects you from your own wisdom, your body, your emotions, your energy levels. They're constantly giving you information about what serves your well-being and what depletes it. But when you chronically override these signals, you lose access to one of your most reliable guidance systems. You stop trusting your own responses, your own instincts, your own knowing about what you need to thrive rather than just survive. There's a wisdom in the natural world that we've forgotten in our always available culture. Everything has seasons, cycles, limits. Trees don't apologize for losing their leaves in winter. Rivers don't feel guilty for their banks. Animals rest when they're tired, eat when they're hungry, seek shelter when they need protection. They honor their natural rhythms without shame or explanation, understanding intuitively that sustainable giving requires periods of receiving, that healthy output demands adequate input. This same principle applies to human energy and emotional resources. You are not designed to be endlessly available, perpetually accommodating, constantly giving without receiving. Your capacity is not infinite, and that's not a flaw to be overcome. It's wisdom to be honored. Recognizing your limits isn't selfish. It's essential for sustainable well-being. Boundaries aren't walls that keep others out. They're the container that allows your authentic self to flourish and your genuine gifts to emerge. Understanding this truth requires a fundamental shift in how you view boundaries, from seeing them as restrictions to recognizing them as expressions of self-respect, from viewing limits as weaknesses to understanding them as wisdom, from believing that saying no is unkind to recognizing that saying yes when you mean no is dishonest to both yourself and others. True boundaries aren't about building walls or being difficult. They're about being honest about your capacity and choosing consciously how to use your energy. The practice begins with tuning back into your internal signals, the ones you've been overriding for so long. Start noticing the physical sensations that accompany different situations. Does your chest tighten when someone makes a particular request? Do your shoulders tense when you enter certain environments? Does your energy drain after specific interactions? These aren't arbitrary responses. They're information about what supports your well-being and what compromises it. Begin experimenting with small no's, declining invitations that don't genuinely interest you, asking for time to consider requests rather than automatically agreeing, leaving gatherings when you feel complete rather than staying until the end because it's expected. Notice what happens when you honor these impulses. Often, you'll discover that the catastrophic outcomes you feared, rejection, disappointment, conflict, either don't materialize or are far less devastating than you imagined. Practice the revolutionary act of checking in with yourself before committing to anything. Do I have the energy for this? Does this align with what I need right now? Am I saying yes from genuine enthusiasm or from obligation? This isn't about becoming selfish or uncaring. It's about becoming honest about your capacity so that when you do give, it comes from a place of fullness rather than depletion. Learn to communicate your boundaries clearly and kindly without over-explaining or apologizing excessively. "I won't be able to do that" is a complete sentence. "That doesn't work for me" requires no elaborate justification. Simple, honest communication about your limits actually makes relationships clearer and more authentic, even if it initially feels uncomfortable. As you begin honoring your boundaries, something remarkable happens. Your energy doesn't just return, it transforms. Instead of the scattered, depleted feeling that comes from giving beyond your capacity, you develop what might be called conscious energy. You become more present in the moments you choose to engage because they're genuinely chosen rather than automatically accepted. Your generosity becomes more meaningful because it flows from abundance rather than obligation. Relationships begin to shift as well. Some people may initially resist your newfound boundaries, especially if they've benefited from your unlimited availability. But the relationships that matter, the ones built on genuine care rather than convenient access, will adapt and often become deeper. People begin to trust your yes because they know it's not driven by guilt or fear. Your presence becomes more valuable because it's consciously offered rather than automatically assumed. You start to discover what you actually enjoy, what genuinely energizes you, what aligns with your authentic self rather than your adaptive self. Freed from the constant pressure to accommodate everyone else's needs, space opens for your own desires, interests, and dreams to emerge. You remember parts of yourself that got buried under the weight of endless availability. Your creativity, your spontaneity, your capacity for joy and wonder. This isn't about becoming rigid or ungenerous. It's about becoming sustainable in your giving, authentic in your presence, and honest about your humanity. It's about recognizing that you can't pour from an empty cup, that self-care isn't selfish, but essential, that honoring your limits allows you to show up more fully for what truly matters. The energy you've been seeking through rest, through stimulants, through sheer willpower was always available. It was just being drained by unconscious choices that violated your own well-being. Your energy is your life force, and how you choose to use it is one of the most important decisions you make daily. When you begin treating it as the precious resource it is, protecting it, directing it consciously, honoring the limits that keep it sustainable, everything changes. Not because you become less caring or less connected, but because your caring becomes more intentional and your connections more authentic. So, if something in this message resonates with your own experience of depletion and overwhelm, leave a comment with the word energy. Let it be a declaration of your commitment to honoring your own capacity, to treating your life force with the respect it deserves. And if these words feel like permission you've been needing, subscribe. There's more here for you. Not about becoming selfish or disconnected, but about becoming sustainably generous, authentically present, and consciously alive to the choices that either drain or restore your essential vitality.